Hello, everyone. Father Lamb here, and it's Wednesday, October 9th. This past weekend, kind of the theme of mercy has been coming through, and it's been on my mind. And I just wanted to share today a beautiful story that all of you have heard, we've all heard. And like any of the stories that Jesus tells, each time we listen to it, every time we ponder it, we can get something else out of it. And it's that beautiful little story of the Good Samaritan. And I'd like to read a couple verses before that kind of lead us into that story. So here's a reading from the Holy Gospel according to St. Luke, beginning chapter 10, verse 25. There was a scholar of the law who stood up to test Jesus and said, Teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life? And Jesus said to him, What is written in the law? How do you read it? And he said in reply, You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your being, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. He replied to him, You have answered correctly. Do this, and you will live. But because he wished to justify himself, he said to Jesus, And who is my neighbor? And Jesus replied, A man fell victim to robbers as he went down from Jerusalem to Jericho. They stripped and beat him and went off, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down that road, but when he saw him, he passed by on the opposite side. Likewise, a Levite came to the place, and when he saw him, he passed by on the opposite side. But a Samaritan traveler who came upon him was moved with compassion at the sight. He approached the victim, poured oil and wine over his wounds, and bandaged them. Then he lifted him up on his own animal, took him to an inn, and cared for him. The next day he took out 2 silver coins and gave them to the innkeeper with the instructions, Take care of him. If you spend more than what I've given you, I shall repay you on my way back. Which of these 3, in your opinion, was neighbor to the robber's victim? He answered, The one who treated him with mercy. And Jesus said to him, Go and do likewise. The Gospel of the Lord. There's a whole lot in this story and a little bit of the backdrop. Of course, the scholar of the law is trying to test Jesus. And comes up to him and says, What do I got to do to inherit eternal life? Basically, what do I got to do to go to heaven? That's a question I think we all have, right? What do I got to do to get to heaven? And Jesus then, as a good teacher, would then put the question back onto the student. And Jesus says to him, What is written in the law? How do you read it? And then he says to Jesus, You shall love the Lord your God with all your whole heart, soul, mind, and strength, and to love your neighbors yourself. What a beautiful answer. Love of God and love of neighbor. Beautiful. And Jesus says, Yes, you have answered correctly. Do this and you will live. But it's not the end of the story. You see, now he says he wants to justify himself. So the scholar of the law says, Well, who's my neighbor? Like, who is it that I have to love? I know I have to love my close family, maybe the fellow Jews, but I have to love people who aren't Jewish. I have to love other people, foreigners. Who is my neighbor? What a question when you think about it. Who do I really have to love to inherit heaven? And of course, Jesus in his wisdom answers with that beautiful story, right? So you have this person, being robbed and left half dead on the side of the road, and the priest and a Levite go by. See, the person's bloodied up on the side of the road. For a priest or a Levite to touch that person, they'll be made unclean. And according to the law, they should not do this. So the priest is keeping the law. This is what the law says. Don't do this. And so he's acting according to the law, but not according to the law of compassion. The Samaritan's a key figure in this story because a Samaritan was half Jewish and half some other race. A Samaritan was a half-breed. The Samaritans were looked down upon the Jewish people. They weren't pure. So even a Samaritan went down here. This low-life person went down and took care of this person. So who really acted with compassion? Who was really treating the person as their neighbor? And it's beautiful that the scholar at the end says, the one who was neighbor to the robber's victim was the one, he says, who treated him with mercy. So we have those 2 words in there, compassion in the very beginning. The Samaritan showed compassion, and then later saying to him, he treated him with mercy. As you know, over at Queens of Mary, we have that beautiful, beautiful mosaic of divine mercy. God is trying to get that across to us, how important mercy is. But here's the thing. in this scriptures, we have the love of God and the love of people. And so the love of God is the first mercy that you and I need to let into our lives. Have I allowed God's mercy into our lives? That sometimes we can go through our lives beating ourselves up forever because we did something wrong way back when. Maybe it's time to allow God's mercy in our own hearts. Once we allow God's mercy in our own hearts and we really experience that forgiveness and that love of the Father, then it's easier for us to show mercy to other people. When we don't feel forgiven and we have all this stuff going on inside us, it's harder to show compassion to those around us. It's really all connected. And maybe today we just might meditate on that in our own spiritual lives. Is there something in your life or my life that we really need God's mercy? Is there something you're holding on to in the back of your mind you did years ago, and you feel like God's going like this? How could you have done that, you terrible sinner? But we need to let that mercy into our own hearts. And once we let that mercy in here, that God really does love us and forgive us, then we can turn to the people around us and be more compassionate and merciful to them. As Pope Francis said, we can call God a lot of things, and we can call God love, but he said the best name for God is mercy. God bless you.